Hi, you're watching DNA Today, a multi-award-winning genetics podcast where we explore everything to do with genetics, from CRISPR to rare diseases to new research. We have won the Science and Medicine Podcast Award for many years now. We have hundreds of episodes, and we really hope you enjoy these conversations where we dive into so many genetic concepts. I'm Kira Dineen, a certified genetic counselor, and your host. We are at the American Society of Human Genetics Conference in Boston. Very exciting to be here in person. That's always my favorite aspect of the conference. But I would love for both of you to introduce yourselves, and then we can get into how the conference has been for you so far. Elizabeth, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Elizabeth Boge. I'm an assistant professor at University of Pennsylvania and see patients at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I think my favorite part so far has really been the global emphasis that they've had. It's really saying, what does genetics mean, not just in the States, we are a national society, but it's really saying, what duty do we have to look beyond our borders? What can we all benefit from looking a little more broadly? So I've really appreciated that aspect of the conference so far.
Yeah, definitely, as I have as well. And speaking of global, we have Yuming Hu all the way from Beijing. So would love for you to introduce yourself.
This is my first time to this meeting. I'm really excited, especially yesterday in the planetary talk. I felt it's quite different from some meetings I attend before, because for the plenary talk, they invite also the graduate students and also the postdoc, really early career researchers. I think this is really great opportunities to them to show themselves, because they are really the people working on their hand. So they it's good for them to communicate directly with the audience and to get ideas from them. I think this is the good aspect I really like.
Yeah. I sadly missed this part of the presentation, but I heard that there was a really great one from a recent genetic counseling graduate student. I believe her name is Ivy. We'll put that in the show notes, from Columbia. She presented about her thesis work from her genetic counseling graduate program and how we can use AI to possibly help diagnose certain conditions. And probably a bit controversial, because apparently she was talking about how this sometimes can be better than geneticists in terms of how fast it is to diagnose. So Elizabeth, I have to ask you about this as a geneticist. Like, were you able to attend this part?
I remember seeing her abstract, and I think that it's really interesting. I think that, one of the really important questions is addressing the disparities that we have in genetics. Who even gets to see a geneticist? Kind of because of the system we have, ends up being kind of a privilege to get to see a genetic counselor, board certified geneticist, and that's not how it should be. It should be equitable. And so if we have more tools to make things more equitable, not just in the United States, but what do we do about countries that literally don't have any genetic counselors or geneticists in the entire country? How do we make sure that those children, adults, everyone get the expertise that they need? So I think there is definitely a role, and it's going to make this inequity that's kind of baked into our system now less of an issue.
Yeah, I think being able to have more healthcare providers have access to these tools to help them, and to not replace geneticists and genetic counselors and other genetic healthcare providers, but so that maybe people in adjacent fields, like maybe nurse practitioners or other doctors, can take that history. Especially I'm thinking for a lot of kiddos, because I think when I think of a diagnostic odyssey, a lot of times it's kids. And Elizabeth, you work in that area at CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, for those that don't know. And so I think it's interesting that we could reduce that issue within the world, just globally, of having these issues where there's not a geneticist available in every country. But even within the United States, wait lists can be very long. And I think about other places like Canada, it can be even longer because of how our healthcare systems are set up differently, that wait lists can be like 6, 12 plus months. So if people can get diagnosed earlier, that's really helpful. If people can say, oh, it seems like this is what's coming up on a differential for a child, and then they can order the right panel or exome or genome. How do you think that could change in terms of more people having diagnosis before they see a pediatrics genetics team? Do you see that kind of shifting where all of a sudden you might, not maybe all of a sudden, but pretty quickly start getting, we have a diagnosis, but now we need the next steps?
Yeah, I think that it comes back to kind of being a collaborative and being interdisciplinary, like you're mentioning. We very rarely does a geneticist manage a patient just by ourselves. So I think
super rare.
Yeah, exactly. We're by nature just very comfortable with reaching out to all of our colleagues across all the spectrum. So I think that it probably should be a little easier to slot those kinds of things into our existing workflow, just how we think about managing patients, because we do have a system set up already where a geneticist is really important, but we're not the only person that's important on the team. So I think that that'll make things easier. I think it's funny because when I was coming out of genetics training, people were saying, well, there's going to be next gen sequencing and no one's going to need geneticists anymore. Why are you even training in this field? And I think what we've really seen is it's exactly the opposite. And so I think it's really going to make genetics more accessible across the fields, and it's also going to bring us into closer collaboration with all different kinds of experts. And I think that expertise is going to cross not just clinically, but also into the laboratory too, because I think we're going to see what's going to generate more translational research, more clinical basic science collaborations, and that's can only be a good thing as we move into more targeted treatments.
Yeah, it's sort of endless how we can use AI in genetics and medicine, because I even think of like variant curation of like, okay, we're looking at an exome or genome and there is so much data. Okay, AI, prioritize these genes or these variants, I should say, so that maybe instead of the 100th variant look at, it ends up being like the 7th. So I think just like aspects like that. And another experience that actually all three of us had together was the Wiley Advanced Portfolios breakfast. So that was a really great experience just to be able to, I got to interview Yuming. So it was great to be able to kind of capture that and start off the day on a really good note. What were your thoughts just coming out of the breakfast?
Yeah, I think it's in a quite casual way to engage with the people, and I got quite some questions afterwards, and I think it's this kind of engagement is very important.
Yeah,
and we can understand each other better. Like they understand how we access the paper, and we get more insights about what are their research, how is their research, and what are they thinking about the publications and what they need from that. It's quite important.
I think people really appreciated you being there to be able to meet with you and get advice directly about maybe a manuscript they're working on, or I want to submit to Wiley, what journal should I submit it to? Is it Advanced Genetics? Is it one of the many, many others that you all have within the portfolio? And it was great that, we were able to, mostly you, I was really asking the questions as the panel moderator, but provide insight in terms of, especially people earlier on in their career, of looking to publish and insights on that and how to write a really good paper. In terms of advice for people that are maybe earlier on in their career that might be writing their first manuscript, or maybe they've gotten rejected from some other journals before, what advice do you have, maybe like your top piece of wisdom of like, this is what you should really try to do with your paper?
I think it's quite important to first get your audience and for those to submit your paper to those journals you usually read, so they are your community, and you can probably get some information from there. And also you can definitely try some new journals and to see what are the differences, whether you can get some other attention from a bit different community or different people. I think this is something you can do, and also it's better for a graduate student or a postdoc to get insight into publishing industry earlier. We have opportunities peer review, working as a reviewer, but as a graduate student, it's better to collaborate with the senior PI, the supervisors, and you can share the peer review, and you can still get recognized by sending email to the editorial office. And you also, it's good for the early career researchers and postdocs to maybe try to be a guest editor for some special issues you're really interested in. with this opportunity, you can engage more researchers in the field with the help of our editors. We have commissioning editors who can support researchers doing the special issue. This is another way of engagement. And also we have editorial boards which are open to the academic editors. For example, for our in-house journals, we want to get more engagement with the researchers, and we really welcome the academic researchers to put some insight together with us to grow our journal. And also we have some really academic journals collaborated with societies. We frequently recruit associate editors or editors-in-chief to run the journals by themselves. This is another way to help the researchers to build up their career, to get more engagement with other people.
Wow,
So
that's an incredible list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people should just write that down and be like, here's the roadmap. So I love that. Thank you so much. And we're into the conference, so we still have some left to go. Anything that you both are looking forward to before you head back home?
I think one of the best things is just getting to meet up in person with collaborators that you might only email otherwise. I think there's something really important in seeing people face to face and just having some downtime and grabbing coffee together and just talking about science and what's next step and throwing ideas around. So no matter how good the conference programming is, that's always my favorite part.
Same. I have to say that's why I'm like usually in the exhibit hall, especially I'm looking at like what's recorded sometimes. Can I catch something later? And trying to balance it is tough because you want to go to everything. Exactly. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, all these people are here in person. These people that I just see on Zoom or, on LinkedIn, I'm like, wow, they're here. So yeah, I'm definitely also kind of a very extrovert. So I love that aspect. Anything for you, Yumi?
Yeah, I think it's really a great way for us to meet people, to talk to people in person. And I think talk once is not enough for another time. And afterwards, we can have some follow-up conversations through emails. And then, we will definitely have some way of collaborations in the future.
Well, I think we should get back to the conference. So thank you both for stepping aside and recording this with me. It's always fun, as we said, to be able to do this in person. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right now we are in the Science Underground booth at, I say Ashg. I feel like that's more of a genetic counseling way of referring to the conference, but you actually spell it out, right, Alex?
I do, even though I, as a professional science communicator, should not be using acronyms, but it is hard to say the whole thing, so I say Ashg.
Yes, yeah. So whatever you call it, we are here and we're in the Science Underground booth. People might recognize your face for those watching, your voice for those listening, because you did a couple episodes with us earlier this summer with your colleagues. For those that may have missed those episodes, can you remind people what is the Science Underground all about?
Sure. So my colleagues Jenny Montooth and Brittany Kish were with me. I'm Alex Bates. We started the Science Underground, a creative science communications company spun out of the folks who used to be at the National Human Genome Research Institute's communications office at NIH. And everyone at NIH communications was laid off in the spring. But we know that it's important, in fact critical, to talk to the broader community about the importance of human genetics and genomics. So we started this company only about 5 months ago, and Kira, you're such a rock star. You gave us the opportunity to talk about it on your podcast, and we cover pretty much the impacts for human health, but also basic science discovery and, increasing in knowledge and the complex history of human genomics and genetics as well.
Yeah, and you all have such an expertise in the science communications aspect, and especially in genetics. So I think it's really helpful, especially for people at this conference. I've seen them come by your booth as I've been hanging out, and I, will leave my jacket here. I'm like, oh, this is home base. And just so many questions of, wow, you can help us with our science communication, and we have a publication come out, but that should not be the end of it, which is interesting because we talked about that earlier in the episode with Wiley Advanced Portfolio, that it's so important to get the word out about the science that you're doing. And I think particularly particularly now is a really important time. And I have to capitalize a little bit that you've come from the NIH, you spent many years there, that you were working really hard on that marketing and that science education to not just within our science community, but also the public. How have you seen this impact at this conference in terms of the cuts that we've seen at the NIH, including your role and your colleagues, including Dr. Eric Green, who was leading NHGRI for 15 years, who also won an award, the 2025 Leadership Award. So that was such a wonderful thing. So maybe I should pivot by talking about that. Yeah. At first, were you able to see his acceptance speech?
Oh, absolutely. And it was so wonderful to see him be so valued for the work that he's done over the course of his career at NIH. You know, he started out there, you know, as a scientist and involved in the Human Genome Project, and then was scientific director, and then was NHGRI director for a long time, and really helped build the human genetics and genomics community to what it is today. And NHGRI as an institution is really about the people and the PIs and how they work together in tackling these large-scale, really big, complex problems that we have right now. I mean, genomics is moving so quickly, and you need a close-knit community like this who communicate well together, and Eric was really one of the leaders in that community. So it was wonderful to see him be recognized last night. And one of the things that I think everyone really came away from with his speech was that the people who made NHGRI what it was are not at this conference because the federal government is shut down. And so federal employees are not allowed to travel right now. So the NIH pavilion here, which has a big footprint here on the exhibit floor, is totally empty. And I think all the researchers really feel that absence, and also, you know, the federal funding cuts and the reductions in force that have happened have resulted in really a struggling community here at ASHG, and I hear it so much from NIH grantees who are wondering, you know, how they're going to keep doing their science and how they're going to keep improving human health because they don't have the same resources and infrastructure that they have had for so long, and the people who are their allies inside of NHGRI and NIH.
Yeah, I have to say it was a bit of a sobering moment when Dr. Green did bring that up towards the end of his talk. I should say, I mean, it felt like a talk because I was getting so much out of it. It wasn't just like, thank you to this person and that person like the Oscars. It was like providing such valuable information of like how to be a really good leader and providing 12 principles that he really has valued and what he has done to become such an amazing leader that he is. And, you know, on DNA Today, he has the award of being the guest that's been on the show the most, I believe. Yeah, right? Yeah, so everybody can catch him, our episode in December when we do our recap of the year of what's biggest in genetics. He brings on the Ashg president. So Sarah Tishkoff will come on as well. But I digress because, you know, it is just sad that we don't have people at the NIH, and that this is probably the most important conference for people in genetics at the NIH to attend. And I'm just thinking of, it's not just that, but all of the budget cuts and people that get their funding from the NIH. Have there been a lot of people that you've been talking to where they either have had that funding cut and they are now scrambling for industry people to step in for that funding?
Yes, I think that is really the vibe here at this conference. This is the place where a lot of people come to talk about emerging ideas and to share what's really hot in genomics and genetics. And there's big science that happens here, you know, through the consortia, like, you know, the telomere to telomere consortia, the Pangenome, Gregor, and then a lot of like platforms that are like Anvil are currently threatened because we're not sure about the future of funding, and the federal structure inside of NIH has changed so much in the last few months that grant applications are not being reviewed the same way. And, you know, that's all pretty well known in the scientific press, but it's starting to be felt now here in the community, and people are not sure how they're going to continue to do their research. You know, they're not sure about their positions at their universities because they often rely on that federal funding, and there are some people who are having to leave academia to maybe go to industry, and, you know, industry is a wonderful partner in all of this, but I think we need that balance between academia and industry to tackle these really really naughty problems. And, you have to have individual like R1 type of awards that balance big science problems too, like big consortia. And honestly, everyone across the spectrum have been coming up to us saying how much they miss the old NHGRI, worried about the people who work there, and then worried about themselves and their neighbors and how these big funding cuts and the uncertainties in infrastructure changes are going to affect the future of this field.
Because it already is affecting it, and we see just not only that ongoing research has halted in some areas, but also the type of research being performed. And Alex, you've done a lot of great work in science communications, especially when it comes to research about diversity in genetics, studying marginalized populations and communities. Can you speak to why that is so important that we do study these different areas that are banned in a lot of different ways, especially from research out of federal grants?
Yes, we've seen in the last few months a lot of executive orders that have come out of the White House that have said that they don't support research into diversity, into research that they don't think fits a certain type of presidential agenda. And that is a lot of research that the genomics and genetics community do that really benefit everyone. So research into historically marginalized populations, indigenous populations, Black communities. These are all communities that have really complex genomes, that have variants in genes that we're still discovering, and understanding those genomes. People of African ancestry are so underrepresented in big biobanks, and they're the most complex genomes that we have. And so by losing so many people who have had even the word diversity in their grants, have had their funding cut just because they have a keyword included, it's really unprecedented times in that way.
And it's interesting that you bring that up in terms of specifically the diversity word, because it's become quite a controversial term, even though I'm going to say both of our opinions, it shouldn't be. I know Alex well enough to be able to speak to you on that aspect. But diversity goes beyond just meaning like diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think that gets confused, as opposed to when we talk about diversity in genetics, that's not usually what we're referring to. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something we talked about in our last conversation on your podcast.
Yeah, so I did have a little teaser there. You did train me before.
Yeah, and that continues to be a big issue. And that's like why we need strong communicators like you and me, I think, to be able to explain that, when you have the word diversity and it has so many different meanings, and when you're talking about data sets, that's a different thing when you're talking about workforce diversity, which is also important. But, these mean different, similar words can mean different things. And that's why I think it's important for researchers to be able to talk about their science in ways that lots of different people who are not necessarily scientists do understand some of these differences. And right now, we really need everyone to come together as a community to be able to communicate, to voters and the broader public about why this is valuable and necessary for the future of humanity. It's really that, I think, big a danger right now.
It is that dire. I agree. And I think I've probably said on other episodes that I'm concerned even for the future of the United States in terms of where we are as science and leaders, because if we've already started to see a preview of researchers saying, well, I don't know if I want to do my PhD in the States anymore, because where's the future there? Is it better for me to go to another country and do my PhD over there, and then are they going to settle there? And so are we going to have this brain drain where our country used to experience the opposite of that? People used to come from countries to come to the United States for their research, for their careers in science. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, are we going to see the other end of it? So I think that's really concerning. And I think that's what makes coming to conferences, especially in person in genetics, is so important, because I feel like I always leave conferences being like, wow, there's other people fighting the good fight like we are. And so being able to do that is so important, and to be able to just learn so much. You've been coming to this conference for a long time, longer than I have. I will admit, it's my second year. I've really enjoyed coming. Why do you keep coming back to this conference? Why is it important and valuable to you?
It's a wonderful conference. It's a big conference, so it can feel a little overwhelming. But it's like coming back to a party where everybody knows you, and you just get to reconnect once a year and catch up and see what people are interested in. And the science is changing, or at least has been, at such a fast pace that it's like being a kid in a candy store. It's like you get to go to all these fascinating talks about what's happening with polygenic risk scores, or with genomic databases and data sharing, and maintaining these like high standards of excellence and quality that the U.S. has enjoyed, ever since the Endless Frontier was published, decades ago. And the U.S. has been a leader in the world in this area, especially in genetics and genomics. We've had institutions of the highest caliber here, and that has depended so much on making sure that we prioritize that sort of like excellence in human thought and knowledge. And I think you really see that here at ASHG. And this year you still see it, but there is a cloud over it because you see empty spaces where posters should be, from intramural scientists at NIH, from federal employees who would be presenting their work. And this is like, people who are also talking about ethics and LC issues, social issues, legal issues, privacy issues when it comes to your genome, but also really next generation technologies, so everyone can have access to this wealth of knowledge. And I think that's what really, for me, is so exciting about being here. And the days go by so fast because you're just having all of these great conversations with people, and you make so many new connections, and it's really something I look forward to every year.
Yeah, it's definitely a conference that I'm not going to miss unless someone important is having their wedding. Then I might miss it. But yeah, this one is like, not penciled in. It's chiseled in stone that I'm going to be coming. So I'm glad that as someone that has been coming to the conference much longer than me, you've really been able to pull a lot of learning from it, but also just like the networking aspect. I think that's what we really keep coming back to, of like, why are we coming in person? And I think that's like so great. But it looks like posters are starting, so I guess we should start floating around and learning from them. But thank you so much, Alex Bates, for coming on yet again and sharing what is going on in the world of genetics, especially in terms of that NIH lens. So really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kira. I can't wait to listen to your podcast.
Thanks for watching DNA Today. To access all of our episodes, head over to dnatoday.com. We also have a lot of bonus content on there that you can enjoy. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, guest pitches, you name it, send them in to info@dnatoday.com. We'd also really appreciate if you could take a moment to rate and review the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to the show. It really helps more nerds like yourself find the show. Also, if you like giveaways and other ways to connect with us, I recommend following us on social. We're at DNA Today Podcast. We also have a Patreon if you want to be the most level involved in the show. That's also at DNA Today Podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Join us next time to learn and discover new advances in the world of genetics.